All right, it's Brian Wright, Coach's Corner. It is Sunday, August 23rd. My son just had his first football game this morning. He did awesome. It was great. He's 8 years old, plays tackle, love it. So much fun. Last night, UFC in Sacramento, fight night. It was a decent night. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Gaziv. Where did that come from? I was actually super surprised. I mean, we're looking at a first round knockout in minute and 20 against a very formidable Kennedy, whose name I can not ever pronounce correctly, so I'm not even going to try. But Gaziv, surprising, upset in my mind. Yeah, big KO. Really good for him. He's an up and down fighter. I don't ever see this guy being championship material, but he is a bit of a problem. I guess decent gatekeeper. If you can get past him, you move up the ranks. If you can't get past him, you probably don't belong. So no, very good fight for him. My son, it was funny. We were talking and he was like, here comes a women's fight. And he wasn't really looking for much entertainment there. But Jadis versus Chavez, that was another KO. Minute 39 in the first round. Straight kick up the pipe to the body, ending the fight super early. Highly entertaining. Now let's get to the three fights that grabbed most of my attention, probably yours. And the one guy who 100% was in the wrong weight class and is now showing us he's going to be a problem is de Ridder. De Ridder versus Dolidze. Dolidze, come on, man. What were you thinking? You're pulling guard and going for those leg locks against a guy who's a very good grappler, who has good control. It was just terrible strategy from Dolidze's part. I don't know what he was really thinking there. But de Ridder was much bigger, much more comfortable, wasn't having the physical issues that we've been seeing him have with the monster weight cut to go to 185. 205 is his weight class. Dolidze, not his weight class, needs to go back to 185 if he's still going to stay in the UFC. But de Ridder was highly impressive. I think a couple fights at 205 to get comfortable with the weight, to get his confidence up at the weight. Yeah, I think this is a guy that could break into the top 5 and be a real problem there. His grappling's legit. His ground and pound is legit. This is a very tall, very long, now properly weighted fighter. Very happy to see him find success in his new division. Then we go to the co-main event, and we've got Spivac versus Petrino. Petrino gets the decision. If you asked me before this fight what the chances were of it going the distance, I would have said basically 0. I was shocked that neither one of these guys knocked each other out. Petrino is an interesting character. He throws so damn hard and then kind of walks away when he feels like he's in trouble. Spivac had the sense of urgency going into the last round, the second half of the fight. Coaches were yelling at him something like, "Do it for your dad." I'm not sure what the backstory is on that, but he just couldn't crack the code on Petrino, and Petrino pulls off a decision. It was okay. Fun fight, I guess. Not the highest level fight we've seen at heavyweight, but heavyweight's kind of a mess anyway. That just kind of happened. I don't really see Petrino going that far because all he is really firepower. So I don't know. But the main event, that was the one that, pulled the night through and gave us in a lot of ways what I thought Islam versus Garry should have been. Anthony Hernandez versus Gregory Rodrigues, another fight that I did not think was going to go the decision. I don't think after the first round, any of us thought this was going to go to the decision. I think Anthony Hernandez showed a tremendous amount of grit. I think Gregory Rodrigues showed a better chin and more grit than we've seen in a while. This was a very good fight. Back and forth. Hernandez, no matter what he got hit with, was not giving up. His leg was trash. The calf kicks were murderous. He was getting battered at times by Rodrigues, but then was coming back. Robocop seriously had his hands full. Fluffy, man, is he durable. This is just a gritty guy. He's so fun to watch. I know Rodrigues got the decision, which is absolutely going to propel him up the rankings, but I don't think this hurts Hernandez at all. He showed so much grit, determination, heart, skill, all of it. Super durable dude. Has firepower, has a ground game. Both of these guys, my hat goes off to them. Both of them showed what I was feeling all week while I'm talking to myself about the Islam versus Garry fight. The two of them had what Garry needed. Islam is interesting because Islam fights for his team, fights for his family, fights for his country, fights for his religion. He has so much that he fights for. He's a super authentic guy. He's doing what he was trained to do. He is what he is, and I respect that. And I think it's easier for him in these championship fights because some people carry that weight and it drowns him. But he carries all of this, and that's kind of his superpower. He has no even thought of quitting because he knows exactly why he's there and what he's fighting for. And then you have Ian Garry, who's creating this character, and he talks about all these different things, and he's trying to be this modern man. It's just not as authentic, and it's not as clear what he's fighting for. And when you see him going into the fifth round, he needed a bit of Anthony Hernandez and Gregory Rodrigues in him. He needed that dog. The two guys last night, those were two dogs that battled it out. Again, both of them showed so much in loss and in victory. Where Ian Garry, it was like, you showed us that there's still a lot more to put on the table in your fights. And Anthony Hernandez and Gregory Rodrigues, I don't feel either one of them at the end are going to be in the back talking about, getting back there or tomorrow. Those guys are only talking about what they did that night because last night they put it all on the line. They fought each other with everything they had. They were battling it out to get that decision. There was not, I don't think either one of them had much left to give. They gave everything, and that's commendable. And that's how you have to go into fights if you're going to be a consistent champion. If you're even going to flirt with being a champion, you have to have the ability to flip that switch when it's necessary. If you want to get the belt wrapped around your waist and you're going into a fifth round where the fight kind of feels up for grabs, you've got to be able to go in there and you've got to be a dog. You've got to go and dog it out. You've got to put it all on the line if being the champ really matters that much. And being the champ of the UFC in any division, it's a life-changing moment. Why would you not put it all on the line? I just don't understand how you can go out and still have this tactical, performative kind of thing still going through. At some point, you just got to bite down. You got to go forward and you got to say, okay, fine. If I can't take this round, he's going to have to take me out. You've got to have a killer instinct. So yeah, last night, that was like, again, these events are so much back to back to back to back. It's very hard for the fans to stay engaged, but I think this was an interesting numbered card to a fight night where we have two title fights that were decent fights. There's a little bit more to be desired from participants. We were hoping to see more. And then you roll into a fight night, and on paper, you might have, loose interest, but they pulled us in. I think de Ridder, the way he dominated the leads, they started to pull us in. Spivac, Petrino, maybe we got up to get something to drink in between and then come back, and we're like, all right, we'll stay. And then Hernandez and Rodrigues really pull us in. They pull us in for 5 rounds of really fun, entertaining, gritty, informative fights. So this is that back-to-back fight life. There's PFL last night. Didn't watch it. I saw a short clip of Cyborg throwing down. And then I was seeing a highlight this morning briefly before I got to my kid's football game saying that there were call-outs. So the retirement fight may not be a retirement fight. It may be Cyborg continuing to do what she does. I'm not really sure what's going on there. I'll have to look into that, and maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later. Talk about a fighter that has a pretty tremendous career, but has had 2 or 3 key moments with drug misses, with fights that are lost, that derails a lot of the talk, where you have somebody that's one of the more dominant female fighters, has a tumultuous relationship with the UFC. And then again, you have the drug miss, and then the physique that she has. So forever, she's just labeled a cheat. Cyborg's had a very complicated career. She's probably made a lot of money and has a nice life that she's built for herself. But the legacy side of it is a little murky and weird. And when we talk about the top female fighters, she's there, but I just don't feel like there's a lot of respect put on the name for the vast majority of the fan base. And then there was REF. Didn't watch. I'll probably go back and rewatch that. It's one of my favorite shows to watch. It looks like Cejudo Merab, Cejudo, the gold medalist that he is, still has that lifelong wrestling skill. He smoked Merab. I think Bo Nickel lost. Gable Steveson, he won. Again, I saw a very short clip that just reminds me of what a freak athlete he is. It was like he feinted on a shot and baited his opponent to shoot on him. And it was just so fast. His twitch muscles are just so fast. It sounds like the boo birds were out for him again. I don't know if it was because people are booing him because of his complicated backstory or the way in which he wrestled last night. But Gable is, again, proving himself to just continually be one of the top athletes in any heavyweight division in combat sports. His next fight, oh my God, what's his name? Was it Sharif or something? Well, whoever he's fighting is most likely going to get starched. Gable definitely is the better fighter going into it. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but I did look into it and I was like, all right, this guy's perfect. He's a little stiff. He's a little slow, doesn't have the ability to keep up with Gable. The UFC is clearly building him, giving him the opportunity to establish himself, get comfortable in the octagon, and continue to be a bigger and bigger problem for the heavyweight division. So it'll be very interesting where we are in, say, December. Gable fights, I believe, in September or October. Do we see him again if it's quick? Do we see him again in December? Do we see him top 10? Do we see him being talked about for some of the bigger names and then getting more opportunity? I think so. I'm not 100% sure. But I do see, with his ability and his level of comfort with standing and exchanging, that he's going to be a problem. Because when his striking is not working, he's going to have his wrestling. When, he doesn't want to wrestle, he has his striking. This guy he's just a huge problem for heavyweight. So fast, so athletic. And it's going to be an entertaining end of the year with a talent like him in the heavyweight division. So, interesting day yesterday, good fights. And again, when I look at all this stuff, I don't know why, but I keep looking for the lessons in all of this. It's just the coach in me, I guess, but I keep watching this. And I'm like, okay, what can I pull from this to pull into my toolbox? Right now, the skills, sure, these are the X's and the O's, but the longer I'm in this, the longer any of you will ever be in this, as practitioners, as coaches, you do realize that the mental side of this is just so important. And then recognizing how people are making decisions on the largest stage in the sport, under the most pressure any fighter's ever going to face in the sport, because the UFC is just a massive pressure cooker. But to just see how all these people are navigating it and then figuring out, okay, what can I extract from that? What can I pull back to the mat with me? What sprinkle of knowledge did these shows provide that we can then give to the next generation of guys so that they can stay the course, find their discipline, find their confidence, and just navigate this. MMA, combat sports, it's a dirty business. It's a rocky road. There's just so many different things. And the challenges that it has for these individuals is rather unique. It's the only sport where you're really sitting around knowing that there's somewhere in a gym somewhere that's training to hurt you really bad. And you're trying to do the same. And you wake up every morning and you realize that in a certain amount of time, I'm going to get into a ring or a cage and I'm going to go head to head with another human being who's trying to put me down in front of my friends, family, and the whole world. It's not football. It's not baseball. It's not basketball. You don't have a team. You can't tag out. You don't sit on the sidelines when you get tired. You can't call timeout and go talk to your coach. You got to just do the job with the time allotted with a very high impact, positive or negative, based off of the decisions that you make. So, yeah, it is a very, very unique situation. And yeah, so for me, the big takeaway once again was after watching Islam and Garry, the community, understanding what you fight for, the authenticity of Islam. Then you have Garry, which to me is the cautionary tale of trying to be a character. He's trying to be this modern man, this classy guy. Maybe he is classy. I don't know. I haven't sat down and broken bread with him so many times that the truth starts to crack through. I only see what we all see. And I just feel like it's a lot of a performative experience. And when you're performing, you have a mask on. So when you have the authentic guy fighting the guy wearing the mask, I feel the authentic guy has the advantage all the time because the authentic guy has already been exposed. The guy with the mask, he's not just fighting to win the fight, but he's fighting to maintain the mask, if you understand what I'm saying there. Then we roll into this week, and then you got the main event with Hernandez and Rodrigues. Both of them they are who they are. Two authentic dudes dogging it out for 5 rounds, coming back from adversity, refusing to quit, and making it very clear that both men were men that wanted to win that fight, move up in the division, get their money better, get their name more established, and just start marching one step closer to that middleweight belt. So the authenticity last night on both sides, that was massive. And the overcoming adversity, the Hernandez, his leg was just getting annihilated and he just refused to quit. He made adjustments. He did what he could with what he had. And seeing that was great. And then seeing how the corner interacted with the guys and the way they just went about it. It was a very inspiring night as a coach. And for the athletes watching, it just, again, it gives you, I'm not going to say hope, but it shows you what you're able to endure, what's possible. And then de Ridder coming back off of a really rocky situation, bumping up in weight, finding success in a new weight class. That's not just hope. That's showing that you can evaluate how your body's responding and you can change weight classes. You can come in without having to cut as much and be fresh and go. There's nothing wrong with fighting up if you're going to perform better. Look at Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar was a guy who barely cut weight for 155 towards the end of his career when 55 started to get a little bit, too hard. As we can't expect people to maintain their quality of performance as they age. Frankie Edgar at 155, he hit his ceiling, and then he knew that at his age, after everything he'd been through, he needed to go down, and he needed to give himself a different advantage. And that is completely understandable and completely fine, and he did very well at 145. So knowing your body, knowing what you're capable of, and then figuring out where you're going to be strongest. These are the things we all have to navigate. I just had amateurs that had to fight up and they realized, oh, okay, it's just another person. It's a couple pounds. It's not that bad. And then, learning how to live at a different way, whatever. But I'm kind of digressing here. But the main thing is just everybody's kind of is demonstrating to me more and more the authentic side of it. When I say authenticity, it's just being who they are at their best, finding the right weight class, the one that fits your body, not the one that the people around you are screaming at that you need to super cut. You need every advantage possible. Sometimes not cutting is your advantage. sometimes, depending upon the kind of fighter you are, depending upon how you rehydrate, sometimes your advantage is actually staying a little heavier, not cutting as much. But you have to know that, and you have to have people around you that are going to identify that and are going to support that, and they're going to do everything they can to make you the best version of you possible. And again, that's the authenticity side. That's leaning into who you are. And then, the dog side of it is just when you're a contender and you're fighting to be the champ, it's just not losing sight of that. I wrote on my Substack, I believe it was yesterday, you see it a lot in martial arts that have belts. You see brown belts. And a lot of times, brown belts are harder to deal with in sparring and in competition than black belts. Because a lot of black belts, they get this mentality of, I've made it. I've got my belt. I've made it. Where the brown belt, they're not black belts yet. And they still have this chip on their shoulder. They're still trying to prove something. They want that black belt. So they're still training really psycho. They're going hard every day. They're trying to prove to everyone around them that they're ready for it. They want that belt. They want that recognition. They want their seat at the table, and they're fighting for it. That was Anthony Hernandez and Gregory Rodrigues last night. It was two guys that in the rankings are at the brown belt stage, and they want to be black belts. And then when they get their black belts, hopefully they're going to want to get the gold belt. But it was that hungry, I'm still trying to carve out my place, I haven't arrived yet situation. It's weird because you get a lot of this in combat sports at all levels. You'll see an amateur will win an amateur title, and then they start to slow down because they start to feel, world famous in their hometown because they won some belt that, I'm not going to say amateur belts are inconsequential because they mean a lot. You trained, you fought, you earned, but you're not building a career off of it. It's just a moment that you celebrate, and then you move on and you go to the next challenge. And then you have guys that they go from amateur to pro. And when they go to pro, they start acting like they kind of arrived. When at every new stage, you're the freshman all over again. It's a beginning stage, and you have to come with humility, and you have to understand that there's still a large growth pattern. And then you go from being a good regional or semi-international pro, and then you go to contender or you go to the UFC, and a lot of guys will come into those situations, act like they arrived again and they've made it, and they slow down and they party a little harder and they post a little bit more and they don't put the reps in. But then on the flip side, you've got the person who goes in and they're like, wow, I really want to stay here. And they fight every fight like they're going to, their job's on the line, because it actually is. You have a bad performance, they have the ability to cut you if you want. So if you really have a terrible performance and you mentally break or something really weird happens, you might be gone. So you get people at different stages, transitioning from amateur to pro to regional pro to international level pro to a UFC level guy to then a ranked person, then a top 10, and then a top 5, then a challenger. At times the grind gets to you and you don't want to be scared anymore. You want to feel like you made it. In a lot of ways, you've made it, but you're not at the top. You don't have the belt. If you want to be champ, you still have to stay hungry, and you still have to have the humility of what's in ahead of you. Ian Garry acted like he was going to be coronated, but he still had to win the damn fight. He wasn't just going to show up and get the belt, but he was speaking in a lot of ways like it was predetermined that this was going to happen. Well, obviously it wasn't. There was a guy who didn't want to let go standing in front of him. So that level of hunger, I'm going to keep going back to Hernandez Rodrigues, because those were guys that, two hungry guys, they were both equally hungry. Neither one of them quit. The decision went to Rodrigues, but they both put out the same effort. They both had to fight through the same level of adversity. Rodrigues just did it in a way that scored more points, but that's the drive and the hunger that has to be maintained. If your body can survive along with that hunger, you have a very good chance of getting somewhere deep in your division, if not potentially a championship opportunity. And when that opportunity comes, you didn't make it. You haven't made it until you've gotten that belt. And then even then, that's kind of a new freshman experience, because once you get the belt, you got to defend the belt. Do you want to be the guy who won it and then lost it and you never see it again? Or do you want to go down with a legacy of someone that defended it, you earned it, then you defended it, and you owned it for a block of time. And then there will be a decade that'll be named after you in that division. So it really comes down to what you want. Comes down, can you get your head wrapped around it? Can you have the discipline and the humility in the face of no matter what things come to you from past outcomes? Can you stay hungry? Can you have that beginner mentality and never feel that you've arrived? I don't know if you ever actually do. I don't know if any fighter actually feels. Any good fighter I've ever known, no matter what they've done, always felt like they came up short. Like you could be considered the GOAT and there's still something you wish you did. That's what a real competitor is. Not from an insecure, I'm never satisfied, but from people that like to achieve high level things. I'm not saying that nothing's high enough, but it's the battle to achieve that keeps them going. And no matter what they do, they feel like, okay, I could have done it better, or I could have gone a little bit farther, or there's this one other thing. You're always fighting something. You're always looking to challenge something. That's the mentality of the top competitors. So, all right. I'm going to go back to hanging out with my kids and my wife, and I'm going to enjoy this weekend. This is Brian Wright. I am the coach. This is Coach's Corner. I don't know what fights are coming up next week, but except the one I do know, Mike Perry will be fighting Dylan Dennis, and I wish it wasn't happening. Not for Mike Perry. I hope he gets paid really, really well. I'm just sick and tired of Dylan Dennis, and that will be something I think I'll have to explore next time. All right, this is Brian Wright. I'm out. Peace.